So let's talk about it with the director at the Geneva Centre for Africa Security and Strategic Studies, David Otto, and Sayed Hoseini, an Iranian writer and commentator. To the pair of you, thank you very much for your time and appreciate you this morning. Sayed Hoseini, I want to come to you first. This is being billed as the biggest ever missile drone strike in the world and the biggest missile attack in Iran's history. It's the first time also that Iran has almost directly engaged Israel. Why do you think now and not in previous events where Iran had an axe to grind with Israel?
Well, Iran action is based on wisdom and the reality on the ground, and also strategic patience that Iran has been always practicing in the last 45 years against all of the attacks by this regime. Iran always has been rethinking about the whole region to be in fire, and the Third World War and the regional conflict and the regional war not to be ignited. So always has been thinking about retaliation very wisely. But when you attack to somebody's territory and you kill 7 of our generals in Iranian consulate in Damascus, then there was no any time for any strategic patience anymore. So that's why Iran decided to retaliate, to punish, and to answer to this particular operation, which now they have targeted Iranian territory. And it was also very calculated. It was not just out of emotion. It was decided after 13 years. First of all, the issue has been taken to Security Council. The Security Council not even condemned the attack by the Israelis into Iranian consulate, and Iran was not optimistic to get any response from the international community. In United Nations didn't do anything, European didn't condemn, none of the international organizations responded to this, though Iran decided, no, it has to be retaliated, and it has to be, the deterrence which Iran has to be restored, and that's why Iran retaliated directly.
So, gentlemen, we'll come back to what international law has been invoked in Iran's action over the weekend, and we'll share that in just a moment. But, David, I'm really interested in your topographical view of how the situation unfolded. How are you making sense of this?
Well, I think you've got to remember that the Iranians accused the Israelis of launching that attack on the embassy or the consulate in Damascus. Israel neither denied nor accepted the responsibility. Now, diplomatically, that would mean that Israel, maybe accepted to take upon that responsibility for the accusation. What is very critical is that the world now is drifting towards, what I consider to be a conventional Third World War. Beyond what we have seen before. I mean, Iran has now launched over 300 explosive drones. Of course, the Israeli government has said that alongside its partners, they managed to block or to, intercept about 99% of these drones. So it is, again, as you mentioned, the first time that we've seen some kind of a direct attack, by Iran into Israel. So I think what is happening here, I mean, the U.S. has made it very clear, but one is not very sure about what that statement really means. I mean, the U.S. has said that it will not engage in retaliation or direct retaliation, perhaps, in order not to escalate the conflict. But one never knows if, the U.S. is actually assisting. Of course, they are assisting Israel indirectly. Because of course some of the explosive drones and missiles were blocked by the U.S. defense system as well. So we're drifting into very unknown areas at this point in time, becoming more dangerous as countries with nuclear capabilities are now engaging not in proxies as we know before, but now in direct engagement. What the Israeli will do, no one knows, but they've promised that they too will retaliate.
David, thanks for that. And you invoked a term that a number of people have been invoking since the weekend by way of question. Is this the precursor? Is this the start of a potential World War III? Sayed Hoseini, Iran has said that this was proportionate, calculated, that this was enough. And in a sense, it was a finger point, not a face slap, if you think about it metaphorically. But Iran does have more capabilities in its arsenal to do more, or it should be a question, does Iran have more in its capabilities than it has done at the weekend, the largest military drone attack ever in the history of this type of conflict?
Of course Iran has, but before, let me just point to correction. When they say 99% was intercepted, this is the narrative of the Israelis. Of course, they realized the capability of Iran, so from day one, they didn't know that they are not going to retaliate, because that is going to be an end of Israel, and it's going to be end of the occupation of Israel, of the region, and the Gaza, and the Palestine. And also it was going to ignite the Third World War, and also the fight in the region. So from day one, they knew that they are not going to retaliate. That's why they have to show to the world that it was not a very important attack. We had no damages, no one was killed, nothing happened. The same thing that when we did to Ain al-Assad, when we retaliated against Americans also said there was nothing. But later on, when the news came and the pictures came out of the bases that has been attacked, they realized it was the damage was more than the proportion. Also, if they claim that there was no damage, they must show that what you call base pictures. They show, okay, here is the operations going on.
So you're saying that Israel is downplaying the impact of these drones? Of course
they are doing it. I have got what you call a picture of Channel 24 of the Israelis, which they say, sorry, we have a lot of photos and the pictures that we want to show, but we have been ordered not to do. You must realize it's a time of war. In the time of war, they can impose any laws that they want into their media, and that is exactly what's happening. But coming to your questions, yes, Iran has got capabilities. That Iran has got hypersonic missiles. Hypersonic missiles go out of space, and from out of space, it comes and hits your target. No one can intercept it, even American. It is not possible at all to do that with that height and with that speed. So Iran did not show the actual capabilities which has. Iran has sent the most elementary drone which Iran has produced. Iran has got drones which is about 10 times more developed than Shahed 136, which is a very, very, very elementary one with a very low speed. Iran has got capability to hit Israel in 7 minutes' time. But no, it took about 9 hours for these drones to start from Iran, fly over so many towns, arrive there on time. And it was a complex operation.
So Hoseini, just a couple of things out of what you're saying. And David, I'll come back to you in just a moment. You're saying that Israel strategically has downplayed the impact of what happened at the weekend. You're also saying that if Iran wanted to do some damage, it could have done some damage.
Exactly.
So just a quick one to you before I throw it back to David. If Israel retaliates in whatever form, and David just said it's a very ambiguous, uncertain time that we're in right now. We're not quite sure what's going to happen next. But should something happen, how do you see it playing out?
First of all, they won't, because they know this is going to be an end of Israel, if really they do that. Secondly, Biden had a very intense conversation with Netanyahu, warning them not to do this, because this is going to be, election coming, a lot of other things. The whole economy of the world is in danger. Biden needs to win the election day, and he is looking after his own campaign and all of that. So Biden has convinced, actually, Bibi not to do this. However, if they do, our retaliation will be according to the proportion of the operation which is going to be carried out into our country. We will see what is the measure, and we will size our operation as soon as we receive the hit, if that happens, which won't happen.
David, how do you see things playing out from this point? As you say, a number of uncertain variables. The situation is precipitous, though. As we say, a number of historic things have happened over the last couple of days. It does come in the context, and I'll put this to our analysts a little bit later on, of Netanyahu's declining popularity and his own fight for political and other survival. What do you think happens next?
Well, I think it's very difficult to determine. Of course, it's a very critical time for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Especially when politics, is involved. And I do agree that, the United States, has a huge say. I mean, it does appear sometimes, as though Israel is part of the United States, especially when it comes to geopolitics. But I think what is critical to point out is that this is a warfare, I call it, which it's not just about conventional, not just about Iran, deploying missiles, or hypersonic missiles, should that be the case in future. It's also about propaganda. And it is possible that strategically, Iran may not have deliberately wanted to target any specific areas, to lead to high casualties within Israel. But just to point out that it does have the capabilities to deploy missiles when it does want to do that. So it's likely that Iran may not have necessarily wanted to target any civilian areas. But it's also possible that the Israelis would play down the impact of these missiles. There's what we call psychological warfare or psychological operations, whereby you want to make sure that the morale of not just your population, but of course your allies is uplifted. So there is a huge amount of misinformation, disinformation, propaganda that goes on in this kind of warfare. So it's very difficult to determine who is telling the truth and who is not. But the fact is that Iran, launched missiles. The Israelis have said that they defended against these missiles. Now that's a question that anyone needs to investigate. There is no clarity about that. But in terms of the way forward, I think the U.S. has taken an open position, which I think makes sense in that it doesn't want to get involved directly. But mind you, the U.S. could also get involved indirectly. So it's a question of time and a question of how this is de-escalated. I'm not sure that the United Nations Security Council will be of any help. But let's see how the days ahead look like. I don't think Iran wants any warfare at this point in time. I think what Iran is also doing is to make sure that it does demonstrate to its population that it can retaliate when attacked, as in the case of Damascus.
Sayed Hoseini, I'll give the closing words to you then. David's also cautioning against propaganda, and this could be propaganda on both sides, overestimating capabilities. A lot remains to be seen. The problem, though, is that the entire world is ransomed to two countries who can do a lot of damage to each other and also bring in other countries. We see the U.S. and Russia probably also playing a key role here, depending on what happens next. Is war what Iran wants, do you think? I mean, we heard, as you say, Iran exercises restraint. This was a finger point. We have bigger capabilities. We haven't used them now. But you have been through a devastating war historically in the aftermath of the Iranian Revolution in '79 with Iraq, a long protracted war that the country perhaps is still paying the cost for. What is the appetite of ordinary Iranians, do you think, to get involved in a full-blown conflict?
Of course, we know what is the consequences of war. By all means, we want to avoid having war. But at the end of the day, not with the cost of our deterrence. Sorry, deterrence of Iran is more important than anything else. And that happened. That has been established. If we wanted war, we were going to retaliate a long time ago. Because this is not the first time Israelis has been doing plots against Iran. They killed some of our scientists inside Iran. They ignite a lot of demonstrations, this, that, in Iran. They attack.
Are these documented? Are these
of course,
coded
yes, they have actually claimed even. Netanyahu himself said that we did these operations inside Iran. But Iran always has been this patient has practiced the patience strategically, but at the end of the day, this particular one is because Israel is the one who has not been considering the international laws from the war on Gaza. In the last 6 months, 34,000 people killed. The whole world is silent. The international communities are silent. Even
well, the
ICJ,
world is not necessarily silent. I mean, civil society has protested.
ICJ did not condemn it as a genocide. They say it's possible genocidal things. In spite of all the evidences available, the Palestinian feels that they are alone. So in this war, in this world that we are living, they only know the language of power, and that's what we showed to them. And if they do more mistakes, we are going to go toward end of Israel.